please stick around till the end of the video because the tips are going to be flowing left and right. Hello, today we're going to make the perfect pie crust made with lard. Now, please let us know in the comments below if you've ever made a pie crust with lard and how you feel about it. Maybe you have some suggestions. I'd love to hear about it. So please do that. And also, definitely you have to like our video. And you also have to subscribe because we want to share with you so many other wonderful recipes, because you know when I make the pie crust, I'm definitely going to make some flavorful pies, and I've got a lot to show you. So please stick around to the end of the video because the tips are going to be flowing left and right. I pre-measured the lard and placed it into the refrigerator. So my daughter-in-law, Lori, would you help me open the door? We're going to get the lard out. And we'll place it back over there because it has to be cold to make this dough perfect. So for this recipe, we're using all-purpose flour. About 2½ cups is exactly what we need. We're going to add in some dry ingredients as well. I'm using it for pie, so I'm going to want something a little bit sweet. I'm going to add some sugar into the dough. Now what happens when I add the sugar into my pie dough? It gives it that golden crust on the outside, and you know we all love the crust. That's why we eat pies, right? So for that, you want to put some sugar. Now let me just give you a little bit of caution. If I was making, say, a savory pie, like a chicken pot pie, then I would want to use a little bit less sugar because I didn't want a sweet dough. But in this case, we do want a sweet dough. So 2 tablespoons of sugar goes right in there with our 2½ cups of all-purpose flour. And also, you need a little bit of salt because you got to have that little bit of taste. You don't need a lot, so don't over-salt it. I use about ½ teaspoon of salt in my pie dough recipe. Now, I want to go ahead, using my hands, these are your most important tools, let's just go ahead and incorporate all the dry ingredients. So the next thing I'm going to use is the topic of this recipe, and that is lard. Now lard, sometimes it's hard to find. When I was a child, we used lard all the time for our baking and cooking. However, because of health reasons, we sometimes now find that lard is almost impossible to find. But in some stores, I have seen it on the bottom shelf where they sell the fats and oils. And also, if you want to go to some of the ethnic stores, like Hispanic stores, you'll definitely find it in there as well, okay? So in this case, it's manteca, or it could also be lard. So, as you saw earlier, I took the lard out of the refrigerator. The reason I did that is your dough has to be chilled. You want to have these little beads of fat that is covered with the flour. And in order to do that, you can't have a soft or oily fat. I've already pre-measured my lard, put it on some parchment paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and place it right in there. And I'm using 13 tablespoons of lard. Now, the next trick, let me just move this out of the way, is to incorporate the fat with the flour. You see also I have here some ice water, and the ice water is important because it's going to help keep the dough cold. And before I can even roll it out and make it into pies, I'm going to have to refrigerate it for about ½ an hour so it would cool and get hard enough, because the idea is when we roll out the dough and make our pie, we want it to be flaky. And to flaky, that means you have layers of fat and dough in between like that. So when it bakes, it just flakes up and crispy. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. It's just goodness, right? So let's go ahead and using my fingertips. Now you'll see a lot of people use 2 knives. I've seen them use forks. I've seen them use pastry blenders. I've even seen them use electrical devices. But the way to really know how dough is to feel in your hand is to do it by hand, do it the old-fashioned way. Then you can use all those modern devices. So using my fingers, I'm going to take the dough and I'm just going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and just keep going around, and you'll see eventually they'll be like little marble sizes, and then they'll go to little pebble sizes, and that's what we're looking for. Now it seems like there's a lot of fat in this recipe, and that is how pie dough is made. When you're making pie dough, you're going to want to have that fat in there, because as it's cooking, it's expanding and making your dough ever so flaky. So I'm just taking my fingers, maybe you can just see a little closer, just squeezing it, see? Just pushing the flour into the dough. It takes a little bit of time, but believe me, in the end, it's worth it. Now, why use lard? As I said, as a child, my mother, that's all she used in making pie dough. Of course, you know, we never refused. We had a great time enjoying all that. And of course, it's an animal fat, and we've seen now where vegetables fat has come into the marketplace. But I've got a little secret to tell you. Every tablespoon, whether it's animal or vegetable, is 100 calories. So forget I said that, okay? Just to let you know. That's exactly what happens. But again, as you already know with my other videos, everything we do is about the flavor. And can you just imagine how this pie dough is going to taste? The flavor is going to be just so wonderful. Okay, now look at the little pebble sizes. Can you see them? We're just about ready to put in the ice water. Now sometimes you'll see recipes will give you a certain quantity of water and you just dump it in there. Don't do that, okay? What you want to do is put a little bit and a little bit. This takes time, but you want a little bit and a little bit at a time until you get the right texture. And the reason I'm telling you this is because all flours are milled in different mills. So you may have one brand X, brand Y, brand Z, and they're all different. So I'm telling you, use 2.5 cups of flour. If you put 2.5 cups of flour on a scale that measured grams, you would see that every brand will come up different in weight. So because of that, you want the feel in your fingers. Now I got my little pebbles, all right? Perfect. I'm going to add in the ice water. And then I'm going to take this hand and just incorporate it. Squeeze it a little bit, move it around a little bit. We want it to form a ball, a little bit at a time. That's why I said don't dump the whole thing in there, just a little bit. You'll never, you know, the only way you know is just by feeling it. And once it forms a ball, that's it. We then have our pie dough, and it's just about there now. Look, can you see that? It's just about there. Let me see if I can make this into a ball before I add any more water. That looks so good. Wow. Yep, I think we got it. Just keep moving it around. Okay, there it is. So, I know I got a little bit of dough on my hand, but that's okay. So, I'm going to need a top and a bottom. So what should I do? Divide it in half. So here's 1/2. I roll it around, look like a big hockey puck. And the reason I'm rolling it around, because when I do use my rolling pin and roll out the dough, it's going to be in a round shape. Good. Now there's some rules. I know I told you to stay around to the end because there's so many helpful tips. But we can remember this little saying when you're working with pie dough. Less is best. Did you hear that? Less is best. The less you work it, the better it's going to come out. So don't overwork your pie dough, okay? I've got it ready, and the next point is to go ahead and to wrap it in plastic wrap and then place it in the refrigerator for about an hour. Around the pie dough, this will stop any of the skin from forming on it. If you don't do this, you will have a problem with the skin, and then once you roll it, it really doesn't come out, and that affects the texture. So this is our pie dough in plastic. We're going to put it in the refrigerator. You could do it a day ahead of time if you want. You can do it in multiples. That goes with the, without saying, with the recipe. If you wanted to do 4 pie shells, you could do double the recipe. But anyway, let's go ahead and put this in the refrigerator. All right, well, let's go ahead and place this in the refrigerator. Lori, would you be so kind? And we'll just put it in there, let it cool down for about a half an hour. Okay, so now you've seen how to make the perfect flaky pie crust with lard. So the next thing I'd like you to do is to leave a comment, let me know what you think, add your input to it. Maybe you have some questions. Now the recipe is going to be in the description below, so look out for that and see what you think of that. And as well, you have to subscribe, you have to like us, because we want to show you even more. I've got some pie recipes coming up. We're going to do blueberry pie, we're going to do apple pie, and the sky's the limit. So please keep us in mind. We'd love to have you back. And remember that all of our recipes are simple and delicious.